the investment of cages, equipment, of,
how much,
all this
how much is like
gear.
a human-sized cage go for these days?
I had a custom one made for $4,000.
Wow. Yeah. That's like 4 really high-end tattoo machines.
Right?
Welcome to the Artful Dollar podcast. It's me, Ryan Roy, tattooer, financial coach, seeker, whatever you want to call me. I don't know. But I am excited to have a very interesting and unique conversation. I don't know anywhere else to find the particular type of conversation we're going to get into today around money and a acquaintance, mutual friends through other friends. I have found the amazing, talented Lucy Sweetkill, who is here with us today. Lucy, tell me, and anyone listening, who are you and what do you do? And yeah, tell me more about you.
Cool. Thanks for having me. So my name is Lucy Sweetkill. Some people refer to me as Mistress Lucy Sweetkill, Daddy Lucy Sweetkill. I have a few names, but I'm a professional dominatrix based in New York City. Have been a professional dominatrix for 12, 13 years now, so quite some time. I'm also a certified life coach with a focus in kink and BDSM. And I'm also a kink and BDSM educator as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I am not, I have friends in the world of sex work, and I never really got to talk to any of them. I've had one friend I talked a little bit to about finances. She actually wanted some financial coaching, and we did do a session, but I'm really curious today to, take a look at the profession of sex work. And I know that's a broad genre in and of itself. What do sex workers, people in sex work, need to know, want to know? Or maybe what are some of the challenges or things that, you've been doing it now for, you said, almost 13 years, maybe that you wished you had known earlier? I'm just curious to hear that, because we were having a conversation before this, also like identifying similar mindsets with tattooers and artists. I know for myself, I've had this experience where I love what I do. It's fun. I can make a good living doing it. And there was this weird, not really identifying as having a real job, quote unquote. And so then the money kind of felt unreal, and I didn't treat it with the same attention that I do now. And we were saying there's some similarities in the world of sex work. And so, yeah, I'm just where could we start this financial journey that we're on today?
Well, it's interesting. There's so much that are interconnected, as what people don't realize about sex work is very similar to being an artist, a hairstylist, a tattoo, anyone who kind of works for themselves, where they're not necessarily part of this big company that has everything organized for you, a retirement plan and vacation days and all of that. I have a lot of friends who, musicians. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and they have to run their own business. That's the related part, right? You run your own business. Your services, your knowledge is your brand and your product. And a lot of people who work for themselves love what they do. When my friends are playing gigs at, 10 p.m. and they're just jamming out and playing gigs, but they expect to get paid as well. I think a lot of the mistakes that ends up happening that I see with people who get into sex work is that they start off not treating it like a real business. But I see that with my friends who are musicians, bartenders, any of that. They don't treat it as a real business. And so they forget to do some of the things they need to do to secure their future. The other thing I see with sex work is that there's a lot of misconceptions. And maybe this is very similar to tattooing. There are a lot of people who think getting into sex work, they're just going to make a lot of money right away. And yeah, there's some people who do, but a lot of it is hard. It's still, there's a million tattoo artists out there, right? There's a million hairdressers,
The bar is raised so high these days, and clients' education and expectations are higher. That's interesting. Yeah. Just thinking about how our industry has changed through clients being more educated about tattooing, I think has actually helped tattooing a lot. And I'm curious, are you seeing that in sex work?
Yeah. And so sex work is one of those things, it's such a big umbrella term for something that there are strippers who are sex workers or porn stars. They're, pro doms, escorts, sugar babies, even though they may not consider themselves sex workers, but they are. There are performers. I think people who are sex educators are sex workers. It's a big umbrella term, and they are all very unique. And in that, there's been a change because I think our ideas of sex work have gotten better in a lot of ways. Like there's less misconceptions around it. I think almost very similar, like more people get tattoos now, that if you have a tattoo, it's not like you're some derelict who it used to be like, if you had a tattoo, you must be a bad person. You must be like untrustworthy. You must be a drug user, like all this stuff, right? Now, everyone has a tattoo. Everyone and their mother has a tattoo.
Are you seeing similarities in sex work?
Yeah. I think a lot more people are knowing people who are strippers or who are on OnlyFans, who are doing a little bit of sex work or have done a little sex work. Conversations about it are more prevalent. I think there's still a lot of misconceptions and judgment and shame, but I think it's a lot more. I mean, people are rapping about OnlyFans, right? I just saw recently, like some of these actresses and actors' kids are on OnlyFans. Like it's become more prevalent to do something within the sex industry. But the money situation is something that still has a lot of problems. So I teach a lot of I mentor a lot of new pro-doms or who are hoping to become a pro-dom. And I teach them, one of the first thing I teach them about is money, running your own business. And that's not only from make sure you create an LLC, make sure you set up a retirement plan, make sure you are, paying off your debt, make sure that you're not just spending all this, because you can make really good money as a pro-dom. And
I'm just curious, what is the ballpark that you feel like on average someone working as a pro-dom could make? I don't know if that's even, you can find that answer, but I'm just curious.
So there's hourly rates. I feel like tattoo artists kind of have general hourly rates.
Yeah.
It really depends. So there are things called domination houses, like working at a studio. I get that's the best, correlation. You
pay a percentage to the house?
You pay a percentage to the house.
It's just like tattooing. I was also thinking a lot of sex work, I know there's gray areas too, but a lot of some of it's illegal. All of it used to be illegal. And tattooing used to be illegal, which is just an interesting similarity too.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is there's a lot of sex work that is still illegal, but there's a lot of sex work that isn't, but I can't speak much for strippers because I've never done stripping. I have friends who are strippers, but a lot of them work at a house, a strip club. They pay a percentage to the house. There's been stripper strikes because of it. Domination houses work the same way. And that's, a lot of BDSM is, depending on the state, is actually legal, depending, there are some gray areas, but there are domination houses. And when you first start, that's how I first started, they do everything for you. They do the marketing, they deal with the clients, but you give a percentage of your money and they set the rates. So you don't get to determine your rate. So even if you're there for a long time, they still determine your rate. And yes, for those who are at the house long enough, the rates can go up, but they're trying to appease the customers. So back in the day when I first started, that was $200 an hour. And I only got 50% of that. Which
everything you're saying is you could be talking about a tattoo shop right now.
Yeah. And so then people go independent, which is no different when an artist goes independent, but
right. It's I'm going to work out of a private studio.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
now you have overhead, right? So
Right.
either you're renting a space, which is very common when you go independent as a pro dom.
Yeah.
You're either renting a space out of, I have friends who run studios where you put yourself on the calendar and you book one of the rooms and you pay a rental fee.
Right. Like a
And
booth
then-
rental at a tattoo
Yeah.
shop almost. Yeah.
Yeah, or a chair. My best friend, she is a hairstylist and she would rent a chair from different places,
Yeah.
It's very
Do
similar.
you do
but
guest
then,
spots in like other states? Do you travel?
Yeah. So traveling, so they call it touring, very same thing where
Yeah.
you're like, yo, I'm going to be in SF and Boston and Chicago. These are my dates. You work out. And your rates are different because you have to rent other studio, you're bringing equipment, you're doing all of that. And so pro dom work is I would say, the most expensive to maintain. If you are going to, I don't want this getting misconstrued if people listen to this, sex workers listen to this. What I'm talking about in a business aspect, it is cheaper in a lot of ways, like what you spend on being, I would say, an escort than it is to be a pro dom, even though escorts make way more money. If you are a privileged escort, I should also make that clear. If you are a privileged escort, yeah, you might have lingerie, you might, have some of those things, but you could use that in everyday life, right? But as a pro dom, I'm not using all my leather gear in everyday life. My equipment
Why not?
costs me so much money. Like the investment of cages, equipment, of
How much?
all this
How much is like
gear.
a human-sized cage go for these days?
I had a custom one made for $4,000.
Wow. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
like 4 really high-end tattoo machines.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's hopefully will last me a lifetime, but it might not. Opening up your own dungeon is a big investment. And while some of the other type of sex work is not that much of an equipment investment. So they're not investing in equipment the way that pro doms are. And so you have to think about that when you want to go down this career in the business, like how much is it to upkeep your tools, you invest
Right,
in
because
your
you
tools.
also, another similarity is we have to deal with cleanliness and cross-contamination and all that. There's a lot of similarities there. I have seen some stuff when I've been tattooing. I mean, I've gone places with people because people get tattooed all over, and there's so we see a lot of similar things. We hear some similar stories. I never really thought about this until we started talking. I'm like, there's like a lot of similarities there. I mean, with its obvious differences,
Well, pain,
There's
vulnerability.
pain, vulnerability. Yeah. I mean, there's so
Cleanliness,
much. Yeah.
like the amount of cleaning supplies I go through to make sure everything is medically disinfected and all of that. When the pandemic hit, I donated because I had to shut down.
I did too. The hospitals reached out to me and I donated a case of a couple cases of alcohol.
So many gloves, alcohol,
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah. So masks, I had so much of that equipment, but that goes into your business and how much you have to look at why running your business. Some of the people forget who do pro dom work when they start. They're like, oh, well, I'm going to charge, $400 an hour. But you have to understand, you're not getting that $400. You need to look at, how much you've already invested in your equipment. You have to look at all your overhead, your supplies.
So like what do you feel? 2 questions. So like I always feel tattooers will ask like, how much do I need to open up a private studio or how much do I need to open up a street shop? And I always say like a private studio, you want to have like 10K at least to put in. Now you could get away with less, but I feel like in terms of bare bones, if you don't have anything, about 10K is good to build it out. And then if you are doing a street shop and you've got 3 or 4 booths, obviously depends on the size. I mean, it can be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 easily. Hey, all you artful listeners. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for giving a listen to the podcast. I hope that it's bringing some value to you in your life. That's really why I started this podcast. And if you're getting something useful or valuable out of it, I just want to invite you to go rate and review this podcast. It really helps me out. And it also helps other people find this podcast so that they can get some value out of it. They can feel more free around money and just get some wisdom and some knowledge that we're trying to share on here. So again, I'm not really asking anything else of you other than to just leave a review and rating for this podcast. It really helps me out and helps other people find us. So thanks and enjoy the show. How much do you see if someone wants to work at, what'd you call?
A house.
Yeah. A house. And they're like, I'm going to go out on my own. What kind of overhead to just starting up costs?
Well, you have to look at two things. Would you rather go independent and rent from a studio, just like renting a chair, right? Or do you want to open up your own space? Those are two very different endeavors. I know a lot of pro-doms who've been in the business a very long time who refuse to open up their own space because it costs so much to invest, to upkeep, to maintain, the rents, all of those things. It's just more of a headache. And having all that equipment, it's a lot of times depending on your lifestyle, it's easier for people to go, hey, I'm going to go independent. I'm going to charge what I want to charge. I know my rental out of these locations are going to cost me $80, $90, $100 an hour. So I just factor some of that in. And then I can have a set of equipment, but I don't need to have as much equipment because the studio has all the equipment and all the cleaning supplies. Do they pay for like cleaning supplies and that kind of stuff? Yeah. That's why you're paying the hourly rental. Then it's easier because then you don't have to do all of that. So there are many people who choose that route. They just charge in a way where they understand what they're really making because minus the rental fee, right?
Yeah.
While me, I run my own studio. It's a private studio. I don't allow other people to rent it. I used to have a studio that I allowed people to rent. That is a whole other business.
Right. That's a whole other model, a whole
structure,
endeavor. Yeah.
So I went from working at a house, building out my own studio with a business partner, having people rent it for 6 years, then was like, I can't do that anymore. That's a fucking headache. I just want my own private space. And I'm thankful I did all that, but having my own private space gives me I'm good at business. I have a background. I went to business school. It gives me the freedom. Some people don't want the responsibility and the cost, but for me, I'm quite organized and I love an Excel spreadsheet. So for me, running my own studio allows me to have the control that I want in every aspect, the design, how I run it. It's an investment for me.
Have you ever seen,
and that's worth it.
You ever seen the shirts? It has like the Excel logo and it says freak in the sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like my business partner, when we had our other studio, she's more of she also is a pro-dom, but she also is a photographer, went to art school. I went to business school, so I ran the business side of our company, and that stuff, it's not easy. And so anyone that comes in, anybody who's new to sex work and especially new to being a pro-dom, I tell them, I'm like, here are the pros and cons of each business venture. How much responsibility do you want? Because that's what it comes down to. How much is it worth it for you to just pay a rental fee to not have to think about all these other things? But how much control do you want? And then from there, you need to ask yourself, how much money do you want to make a month? Because
in general, I think everyone should ask themselves that question. And a lot of people don't set that goal.
Yeah. And so financially, I always ask them, you're not getting paid a typical salary. You can't, because your work is going to fluctuate because you are choosing your hours and how much you want to work. So you need to first figure out all your expenses, your rents, your this, your that, your Netflix account, everything your money is going out.
So you're saying not just business expenses, but your living expenses.
Yes, everything.
Yeah. Because 100%.
Yeah, all expenses. And then ask yourself, how much money do you think you need to make a month? And then break down your hourly. Are you even making that? How many hours? Like if you want to charge for $400 an hour, then how many hours do you need to work? Because some people think, they also have to realize, you can't, like, the going rate right now, houses are charging still about $250 maybe an hour, but the quality of the experience is much lower.
Yeah.
You have inexperienced people who are not doing the best.
In tattooing,
Because
the golden rule is good tattoos aren't cheap and cheap tattoos aren't good. And I'm sure that applies the same.
And so, but the going, I would say most pro doms at the higher end are around $600 an hour. While escorting, you are going to, there are a lot of people who are charging $1,000 to $1,500 an hour, like up on the prime end of it.
And because I'm like completely a novice, I don't know, like what does escorting mean exactly? What's involved? And I'm sure even in that, there's probably a broad spectrum, but what does that service entail? So
as someone who doesn't do that, but knows a lot, so escorting is what most people think it is. It is, a form of prostitution, or it is.
I picture you're going to a party with a politician, and then later you're having sex with them. That's kind of what I'm imagining. So
it's sex, but it's a mix. So most of the time, the people who are using the term escorts are in a privileged position, meaning they are not a street-based sex worker. They're not on the streets looking for work. They are online, have a Twitter account, have a website. They talk about their interest in reading, and they are that. They are a lot of times spending dinners with someone, lunches, and that leading to an intimate interaction eventually. Most of the time, they're overnights or they're going on trips with people, but it is that you are paying for
$1,000 an hour and you go on a couple day vacation. I mean, that's
but there are different rates when you're doing
right. That makes sense. Yeah,
those committed times, but it's very common. There are a lot more people who are seeing escorts. A lot of people are paying for it because they're like, I want to enjoy my time with someone. I want to guarantee that there's not going to be an argument. I don't want to just go with someone I'm dating. I want to have fun, be with a beautiful woman, have her, treat me well, dote on me. There's a lot of pros to it. I definitely get it. As someone who's gone on unfortunate trips with exes where you're like, why did I even go on this trip with you? Sometimes I get the appeal of having someone who is purely there to please you, right?
Yeah.
It's worth it. Pro domination works usually a bit different. There are people who do both, who are kinky escorts, we call them, who have a kinky lens to their escorting. For me, I don't do any escort work. My realm is purely in professional domination. I see a lot of couples and helping them learn how to interact and bring kink into their bedroom in a safe, way. And so I see a lot of couples. I see, a lot of individuals, of all gender and sexuality. And it's about just learning kink and BDSM, which is not very available, in a lot of people's personal lives, because they're afraid to sometimes bring up that maybe they have a foot fetish, or maybe they want to be dressed up like a dog, and have a little puppy play. And some things in my world just actually require a lot of knowledge, like to tie someone up safely where you don't kill them or strangle them. There's actual...
Or drop them.
Yeah, there's a lot of technical skills in what I do. And funny enough, I actually have tattooed some people. I have a little tattoo machine.
I'm sure that's I actually have a funny story. I was tattooing this guy and he came in with his, I believe it was his mistress.
Mistress.
That was what I was told. And I was tattooing a pair of handcuffs on his ass, and it said the word lust. And his mistress was talking about something about lust, I guess describing it. And he was like, that's what lust means? Like, he literally didn't know what the word lust meant. He was just getting whatever tattoo she told him to get. And I kind of had a feeling there was like, she designed this. She was forcing him to get this tattoo. Like, that was their dynamic. That was their thing.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had
so in a way, I mean, I like participated in a sex work activity in that regard. Yeah, for sure.
I've had people tattoo my face on them without my consent, which I was like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And I just like, they're like, I just wanted to honor you. And I was like, I did not agree to that.
I hope it was a good tattooer who did it. I hope they paid for quality work at least. Or maybe we hope they didn't pay for quality work. So then it's unrecognizable.
So it's funny, like sex, us talking about how sex work and pro-dom work relates a lot money-wise to being a tattoo artist or being any artist. It's the same, and I try to get the people I train and mentor to see it that way, to see it as any other
Maybe
business.
You should be a financial coach for sex workers. Maybe that's there's a hole. I mean, that's why I started this business, was because there was no one else providing that service, a unique service to an industry. Do you even know, like, what's the US GDP in sex work?
Oh my God. It's
gotta be close to $1 billion, I would assume.
Yeah. It's because it's a, underground black market type of industry, but it's OnlyFans alone has brought in so much, and that's like more. I mean, the porn industry is such a huge industry.
I've heard that, like, with porn, there are banks that won't work with porn companies. There are credit card processors that won't work with porn companies. And so you need to it's like a weird challenge financially to operate a porn business, because I don't know if that has to do with, I'm curious, like, where is the legality line? Like, what makes sex work from a purely legal standpoint? What crosses the line of legality? And maybe it's different in every state, I'm sure, too.
Yeah. But see, that's the bullshit thing, is that there are countries where sex work full sex work, full prostitution, full everything is fully legal.
Yeah.
And so
I'm definitely not saying that it's not bullshit. Yeah, I'm just curious, in the eyes of the law, like, how do they say, okay, now you have done something illegal? And then I'm curious, people that are working in areas of sex work that are considered illegal, do they have challenges in terms of paying taxes and investing for retirement? And I would assume that would be much more difficult.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying, why it's so bullshit, is because we're in a global economy, right? Like, we're no longer in our own little bubble where whatever you do in New York, like, we are in a global world. We're very connected. So someone who lives in a country where what they do is actually fully legal are being denied bank accounts because that bank happens to be associated in a country that has part of what they do as being illegal, even though they're based in a place where it's legal. And so porn is one of those things where porn is legal sex work, yet it's not about legality, it's morality. They are being denied because of the morality of who runs those companies, who are in charge, who are saying. And so that's the really fucked up thing, is that there are legal forms of sex work and people getting their accounts shut down. Like Chase is constantly doing that to folks to sex workers, to OnlyFans, and even sex educators, people who are teaching classes, which is fully legal, are having issues getting payment processors to teach about BDSM to couples,
Are there any loopholes or any like tricks that people will do to secure banking and credit card processing? Like, any way that anyone listening who's in sex work might be able to get around that? Because
it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I would say, do your research. There are independent companies coming up to help with some of those that have come out outright and said that they're in support of sex workers and all of that. But it's constantly changing. It's about doing your research, being really, really fucking careful. You just have to be really, really careful.
Yeah.
Like, in how you go about managing your money. There is definitely like 5 to 10 more steps you have to deal with than any other.
Are there
type
like
of,
accountants that specialize in working with sex workers? Yeah, I would assume.
There are, if you do your research, and that's why I don't want to like, in case some of them like go down or in case some of them no longer exist.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of companies there. Thankfully, there's still a lot of companies who are really open to working with sex workers. So financial advisor, like I have a financial advisor who has never worked with a sex worker, but she's worked with a lot of people who run their own business. She works mostly with women, which is why I reached out like a few years ago and I let her know what I did. And she's like, got it. Okay, let's see how we can navigate this, you know?
Yeah.
And my accountant is the same thing. Like, luckily, has been really great.
I always tell people, whatever financial service professional you work with, you want to feel as comfortable talking to them as you would to a therapist.
Yes, I agree.
This is if you don't feel that comfortable, I want you to know you can feel that comfortable with someone, and you just haven't found the right person. You're not beholden to the first rando that you started working with. You can switch accountants, financial advisors, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree. You have to feel comfortable with them because I am so thankful that I actually found a financial advisor, because what she helped me feels like I was already doing really well, but it was less about the things I was doing, but more my own security, like my feeling secure that what I was doing was the right path. She gave me that confidence by going over stuff to just be like, you're actually have been running things quite well. And she just helped me set up, like, I had already had an LLC. I cannot stress this enough. Get an LLC, incorporate whatever. Depends on the state you are in.
Yeah.
It depends on the city you're in. New York City is a little bit different. Like, a lot of people get S corps, which is great, but not in New York City specifically, because there's all these other loopholes that people
can
need to
be good. I have an S corp in New York City, but it's not for everyone. It depends on how you're operating. And also, like, I will say, from sending a lot of people to CPAs and financial advisors, you can't just assume that they're going to do everything for you. Like, you went to an advisor and they said, hey, you're actually really in good shape, so I can help you. But if you don't, a lot of accountants, if you hand them a box of receipts and you're like, help me, like, they're not going to work with you. Or they will work with you, but they'll label you as people don't know that accountants have like A, B, C, D, F rankings for their clients. And if you're a D or an F client, they will push you off to the last minute and they won't spend a lot of time on it. And so the more on top of the business side of things you are, the easier it is for your accountant to deal with it. And that goes for all self-employed people.
Yeah, educate yourself. That was the big thing for me, was like getting myself educated so I kind of knew what we were talking about. Preparing. I save every fucking receipt possible. That's a big thing. Like, one of the biggest things I do is every year I have a document, like a folder, and I, for that tax year, and I screenshot receipts. I put it in, like, if I pay or do something online, I like fill that folder up with all the things, and I have like an outline of like the areas where my money might be coming in, the,
do you
investments.
Use QuickBooks or bookkeeping software?
So I don't use I have a system that works for me that I've always of used. But when I've worked with sex workers, some people are just like, I don't know if I'm just not tech savvy. And so I try to almost simplify the structure for a lot of people. And I go, well, let's just do a Word document. Right? So let's talk about here are the things that you might have to report and do every year. So just have like a basic Word document if that's more helpful, instead of feeling like you have to learn.
Because bookkeeping
new-
software can be intimidating. I
Yeah.
use it. I love it. It takes care
Yeah.
of so much, but it's super intimidating in the beginning. So anything's better than nothing. And if you
Yes.
start with a Word document, then later on you can build that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even give people Excel yet, because sometimes they're like, oh, you know, I have a love for Excel, but not all people do. And so it can feel very intimidating. And so I try to work, you know, I try to help my community, and by giving them my mistakes that I've made, things I wish I would have done when I first was doing pro dom work.
What's like one of those things that you wish, and we probably have the same mistakes that we would say, but I'm curious for you. What's one that you're always telling people, I made this mistake, I don't want you to make it?
Oh my God. Buying expensive bullshit. Like,
yeah.
Because, you know, when I first started, I was like, man, a lot of cash, making a lot of money quickly in cash, you know?
Yeah. Cash is really hard to manage.
Yeah. And so before, you know, I worked in fashion, I worked in a tech company, you know, that stuff goes into your bank account and it looks different, and taxes are already, you know, things are being put aside. And so, but when you just have wads of cash and you're coming home, you know, my bartender friends can attest to this.
Yeah.
Cash can go quick when you're just like, oh, well, you know, I'm just gonna like count your cash and put it the fuck away. And get your business side together, because I wish I didn't just keep cash. Like, I made the biggest mistake my first few years because I was like afraid of like, well, I don't want to like claim everything and blah, blah, blah. And like, I shouldn't have just been sitting on so much cash.
How did that come to, how did they come to bite you in the ass like later on? Was there any?
Because your cash devalues, right? Like, it's not making you any money.
Yeah,
like,
it's just at the rate of inflation, losing value every year.
Yeah. And so I could have been making interest on that, you know, even it's sitting in a high yield savings account, right? But I was just so afraid to tackle the idea of like, okay, I'm paying taxes, but what I do is kind of in this gray area. There are ways to navigate that. There are really ways to navigate what, even if you work in a gray area, there's a way to navigate that and make you look fully legit and do it in a full legit way. And this is the other thing. Sex workers, pay your fucking taxes.
Tattooers, pay your fucking taxes.
That is the one government agency that you do not want to fuck with. Do not.
Yeah,
fuck
I always
with
tell
the
people,
IRS.
I'm like, you know, from a personal standpoint, like the pirate life, that's what we call it in tattooing. I don't know if you guys call it that, but the pirate life, meaning we're not paying taxes. It works okay in your 20s.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that great in your 30s, and it really doesn't work. The longer you wait, the harder it is to get off the pirate ship and onto dry land. And the more it bites you in the ass later on. So it might feel like, oh, I'm getting away with something in my 20s. But the sooner you actually get off of that pirate ship and get on dry land and start paying it, you save yourself thousands of dollars, tons of pain and frustration doing it sooner than later. And I think so many people just wait so long to do it that they feel like they can never actually accomplish it.
Yeah, I love what you guys call it, and I'm definitely going to take that and appropriate that, because that's what it is. It's like, I'm someone who doesn't like big government. Yeah, I don't want to fucking have to pay for all this bullshit, you know, taxes. Nobody wants to pay the taxes.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to pay it.
Every tattooer would agree with you on that.
Yeah, we don't, but there are ways to navigate that. But you need to pay some. You cannot just pay none.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I'm always trying to get sex workers to understand. Like, learning how to navigate that part is going to be the biggest part. Become legit, or else you are not going to be able to buy anything, invest in anything. Like, it just is such a headache.
Yeah. You're going to retire one day. You can't tattoo forever. You can't do sex work forever.
No.
At some point, you're going to want to do something else. And again, it's every day you don't take some baby step in that direction compounds in difficulty later on if you wait to do it later on.
Luckily, I'd always been one to pay my taxes, but I just sat on so much cash for the first like 5 years of sex work. Now I like kick myself going, fuck, I lost so much money on this thing that would have been so much better for me.
Yeah. You seem like you know what you're doing with your finances. How does being good with your finances help you be a better pro dom?
Well, you know what? The big thing is you then don't have to say yes to clients you don't want to say yes to.
Yeah, that's one huge benefit. Absolutely.
Yeah. And because what happens is within my work, when you're saying yes to client, it's such a intimate interaction that you can't zone out of. And it requires you really connecting because you're dealing with people in their most vulnerable states. You have this power dynamic. You're dealing with their actual safety, physical safety, but there's so much mental safety in that too. And if you're saying yes to clients that drain you, then you're burnt out and won't be able to be there for the clients you really want to be there for. But
you literally could say everything you just said and be a tattooer and say that the intimacy, the connection, the holding space for someone, the safety. I mean, very different degrees, I'm assuming, I'm sure, but it all applies. It's interesting.
And it's your creativity. Like my creativity is through constructing a BDSM scene, you know, like I love that. I love creating this experience where afterwards my subs are like, this is what I say to my clients a lot. I go, I want to know that on your deathbed, I'm one of the top 5 memories that pops up in your mind because that experience was so amazing and profound. And like, that's the thing that people don't understand in what I do is like, I've had people say to me, you know, I am at my truest self when I'm with you. Because they don't have to have all the facade. They can express themselves fully and be vulnerable and be open and ask the questions and not feel judged about any of themselves. And that I think is so beautiful. And so my creativity comes out. In my construction and my connection. And so if I am having to feign that because I'm seeing someone that I feel like I need to see because I don't have my finances together, and then now I'm like, fuck, I need to make money. So I'm just saying yes to sessions that I don't actually want to say yes to, then I just drain myself of my creativity.
Yeah.
And then I'm just no good to I'm no good to myself. I'm no good to my other clients. Being able to say no because I feel secure in how I've set myself up, that is a lot of freedom and a lot of power.
Yeah, I'd say there's obviously a lot of obvious benefits to being on top of your finances. But as a creative, as a self-employed person, artist, that's the number one benefit is it gives you the freedom to do the thing that you love to do, why you got into this in the first place. Yeah. And it doesn't drain your tank. It actually fills your tank to do that kind of work.
Yeah, exactly. Like it makes me feel inspired for my next session, my next client, when I don't feel so drained. Like obviously any work you do, your energy does get depleted. You can't be tattooing 24/7. You can't be doming 24/7. But I feel my most creative and at my best and my most connected when I can say no and I have that. Financial security just gives you that, right? It's that security. It's a security net that makes you feel like, okay, I don't have to worry about this stuff because I got all this other stuff on lock.
Have you ever read, do you know Morgan Housel? He wrote The Psychology of Money. Read that?
No, I
You would
haven't.
love it. You would really enjoy that book. He uses a lot of stories and cases to convey the messages or philosophies that he's trying to get across. But there's a quote that I love in that book. And he says, every dollar you save today buys you back freedom in the future, buys you back a moment of freedom or options in the future for every dollar you save now. And I just like that perspective.
It's exactly that, right? And I think about it that way because honestly, at my core, so I'm a Buddhist, and at my core, I do not believe in capitalism. But I'm in it, right? Like I can't change that. That is the world I live in. It goes against a lot of my own personal philosophies, which is why I think I sometimes give people all this advice, because what I want to provide for myself within the structure of capitalism is peace and freedom and security.
Yeah.
And even though my philosophies do not enjoy the fact that I have to work for money, I know that's my reality. And I try to do that in the best way possible to honor my values, but also allow me to have peace and joy for when I'm older. Like I'm a minimalist. Most people know, like I've been in the same apartment for 15 years. I'm always like, oh, I have this, go ahead and use it. I'm always community oriented and allowing people to use equipment and things that, I believe in sharing. In all honesty, like we don't all need a rug cleaner. One person needs a rug cleaner and we all can use it until it just is used up. And so those are my belief systems. But I understand that I live in the structure of capitalism and that I want to feel secure in that. I want to have a home. I don't want to have to work forever. I want to be able to spend the time with the people I care about. I don't need many things. I don't buy many things. I mostly only buy recycled items and vintage items. I believe in all of that. But I know that if I want to go see my family in California, I'm going to need money for that. And so that's why I've worked on my financial security, is to be able to honor my values and the things that mean the most to me for later on in life and for right now. Because if I don't feel financially secure, I end up having to disregard my core values quite often.
Yeah. I think just on the topic of capitalism, which is such a charged topic, just hearing, and I think this is good for people in general to hear, like you can be sort of against something, but also embrace elements of it, because if you don't have a choice to live outside the confines of capitalism. And I like, there's a quote, Winston Churchill on democracy. He said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the rest. You could almost say that about capitalism. It's the worst form of economics except for all the rest. Like, and maybe there's some better one out there, but it's the one we have. I think that's at its most. And there are certain things that have been created by capitalism that would not necessarily be created otherwise, for better or worse.
Yeah.
It's what was here. So can we accept that, even if it's against some of our core values, and work within it and learn it rather than completely resist it? Because I think it's that complete resistance to it and hating it that keeps you stuck. And something I heard recently that I love is, where you place the blame, you place the power.
Yeah.
And so if you blame capitalism, you might have all the reasons in the world, and I'm not saying you're not justified, but you give capitalism power over you when you do that. That's all.
Yeah, because I mean, I was a punk rocker. I was all about like, maybe I'll just live on the streets and this and that. And like, I'm like, no, I like my showers and I I would like to have air conditioning. like that's the thing is I still like nice things, right? And the luxuries of, first world stuff. I have to work within capitalism to my bet. Like, I don't want to just completely suffer. And I also want to use it for good in a lot of ways. Like, you cannot, I guess you can if you don't, but that's what we live in. We live in capitalism. And, I'm not here trying to buy a yacht, and I'm not trying to swindle people in a certain way so that I can just have more and more money for the sake of having more and more money. But I would like to be able to have the comforts for myself and for my family. And I don't necessarily need a Birkin bag or a Louis Vuitton bag or anything. I'm not buying those things, but I want to be able to have connection and experience. I want to be able to go.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go on vacation with my family
and not stress about the bills while I'm on vacation.
Yeah, because when you work for yourself, that's the other thing. When you work for yourself, you going on vacation means you are not making money. And people forget about that too. There are some sex workers who are part-time. They prefer to have like a typical legit job because it's very stressful to know that your time off is like you making no money plus money going out the door, right?
No PTO in Denmark.
Yeah. And so I want to know that my money is working for me, whether that's in investments or just in a high yield savings account or something where, where it's not just sitting in cash. So again, sex workers, stop sitting on cash. It's doing nothing for you. And get your finances in order ASAP, because it will give you that freedom so that I can be on vacation. I can, spend that time with my friends or family and not be concerned about like all those things or the unexpected. They say that most Americans are one accident away from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And
a lot of tattooers are one hand injury away from financial ruin.
Yeah. And I've seen that. I've seen that within my own family. My father went through that, lost his job. And then from there just went downhill. And everyone is one accident away. So I don't want to be that. I live in New York. I don't want to accidentally get hit by a car, which happens all the time.
Things. Yeah.
And then I can't work because I am my job. And then I'm now freaked out, right? So I want to have all that covered.
Yeah. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for taking the time. I feel like it was a very interesting, the dichotomies and the similarities. And if anyone's interested in working with you, whether that's to learn from you or work with you in any of the capacities that you offer, how can people find you?
My name is super easy to look up. So Lucy Sweetkill, Sweetkill. There's a lot of info about me out there, but I have a website, social media. I've been on a bunch of podcasts. I actually have an episode that was done on my work that aired on a show called Slut Ever on Vice TV, which I think Vice TV just stopped maybe. But yeah, so you can find a lot of info on me. So
Cool.
If anybody wants to reach out.
Did you ever talk about finances on any of these podcasts?
Very little have I talked about finances. I think everything else has just been about kink and BDSM pro-dom because it's not common that people are like, I have a million questions.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
so that's why I wanted to do this because I think it's super important. It's been a journey I've been on over the last few years as I'm in this like more mature part of my career.
I like to use the word journey because I use the same word. I'm always on my financial journey. Still to this day, I'm on my financial journey. It is a journey.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It is a journey, and getting people to start it is the big thing.
Yeah.
And it'll be okay. It will be okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, I just want to prompt that if you got some value out of this conversation, please go and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you saw this podcast. It really helps me out and it really helps other people to find this podcast. I want more people to have these types of conversations around money so that we can all be more free and at ease and abundant and able to create the lives that we really want to live. So please share this and rate and review. Appreciate it. Thanks.